Ladies and gentlemen, Kerry Siggins, I'm so glad that you're here. Little background, just to kind of tee it up. I've been excited for this conversation, and we've been trying to coordinate it for months now.
Quite some time.
Probably since at least the beginning of the year.
Yes.
So thank you so much for taking the time. We were talking off air how, crazy the life of a CEO is. And I know all of the, all of the things that you juggle and all of the irons that you have in the fire. So what I want to do is tee it up a little bit, have a little bit of an introduction, and then kind of dive in.
Let's do it.
For everybody listening, Kerry is somebody who I really look up to. And I don't know if you know this or not, but I've paid attention to you and your story and your content for years. And it was a while back, you were the keynote speaker at the La Plata County Economic Development Alliance. And I was like, I was just floored with the topic of the conversation and the way that you presented yourself and your backstory and everything. So for everybody listening, Kerry is the CEO of Stoneage. She's also, though, the author of The Ownership Mindset, podcast host of Reflect Forward.
Yep.
And I did that without even checking my notes.
That's amazing. I'm impressed.
I had them here, but also a keynote speaker, a community leader, and just somebody who I am so appreciative of the fact that you're going to let me pick your brain for a little while, because I think we have so much to learn from you, and your perspective is so refreshing. What I'd love to do, if you're up for it, I think that your background story is very important. I think, a lot of times people listen to content like this and podcasts and, the sort of growth-minded content that we consume. And I think sometimes people miss out on where people came from to get to where they are.
Right.
And your story especially is, I think, remarkable because an amazing story of transition from how you got to where you are and where you came from and stuff. Yep. If you don't mind humoring me, I would love to get at least the abridged version of, the Kerry Siggins come up and, just especially some of the stuff that you shared when you were doing that presentation. Yeah. But I just think I think it's important for people to know that we're not talking to somebody that was always a CEO and always this polished and,
yes, I don't know about polished. I walked in today and I was like, oh my gosh.
I forgot to warn you that we're doing video.
I know,
That's my fault.
I've had an insane day and my hair's a mess. Yes. Well, thank you for that very nice introduction. And I'm really glad to be here too. And I'm glad we could finally get it all worked out to make this happen. But a little bit of my backstory. So I had substance abuse issues in my 20s, and we won't go into all of the psychological trauma and everything that got me to where I was. I've done a lot of work on that, but ultimately I was coping with body image issues and this crazy intense drive that I have, which if it's not harnessed, can lead to very destructive behaviors.
Tell me about it.
Yeah, right. I know. Yeah, yes. As you go run hundreds of miles, it led me to some pretty dark places. And on Labor Day of 2006, I accidentally overdosed in my apartment in Texas alone. And I woke up, and I shouldn't have, but I'm supposed to be here for a reason, and I'm trying to live that purpose now to the best of my ability. But I woke up and I was barely breathing. I was sick, but my heart was racing. And I feel like, the universe, God, whatever you believe, I was like, nope, it's not your time. But I was so ashamed of the situation that I had got myself into that I didn't even call anybody. And I said, all right, if you're going to die, you're not going to die on the floor of your shitty apartment. You're going to get into bed. And so I crawled into bed, and I couldn't get out for 3 days. And that was really rock bottom for me. It wasn't actually almost dying. It was the fact that I couldn't go to work. So I was I had high functioning substance abuse issues. And I was always at work, no matter what, no matter how bad I felt, no matter how hungover I was, I always went to work. I have a tremendous work ethic, and I'm very driven. I was just coping with a lot of issues in a really unhealthy way. But I called in sick to work for 3 days, and that was it. I said, okay, I have to change my life. I'm going to die if I don't do something different. So I called my mom, who lives here in Durango. I actually grew up in Montrose, for those of you in Colorado, just about 2 hours up the road. And I said, I need to come home. And I told her everything. And so she said, yes, but you need to figure this out. You are such a tremendous leader, and you can lead people to great places, or you can lead people right off of a cliff along with you. And before you can really step into that potential, you have to learn how to lead yourself first. And that was the first time I'd heard about this idea of self-leadership, and I just agreed with her, even though some of the things that she said to me really stung, but they were true. And so 6 weeks after my overdose, I was on my way from Austin, Texas to Durango, Colorado. It's exactly 1,000 miles from my apartment door to my mom's. Yes. And I came here to rebuild my life. I had $100,000 of debt from living in an overextended partying lifestyle, and I had no job. And here I am. I'm like, okay, this is it. This is make or break time. What kind of person do you want to be? And that's how I got back here.
Was the move intentional in terms of like you needed a new environment or a new reset, just kind of a clean slate? I mean, was that, taking that step, I feel like is very significant at the time. Did you, and I guess the follow-up to that would be those leadership traits, those leadership, qualities that your mom shared. I'm kind of curious if, even though you were in a tough place, even though you were kind of fighting some battles and dealing with that stuff, if you knew that you had that within you too, and that's kind of why, because taking a leap, moving from Texas to Durango's no little deal.
No, definitely. So one, I knew I needed to remove myself from a situation. I did not want to go to rehab, and rehab works, at least in the short term, because you remove yourself from the influences, from the temptations, from needing willpower. And I did not want to do rehab. So I knew I needed to get myself out of that environment. But mostly I think it was a calling to come home. I'm very close to my mother. I spent my whole life trying to get out of rural Colorado, and I don't think I really appreciated like any 18-year-old kid, right? I don't think I appreciated how powerful it is to be close to family and to be where your roots are. So it was kind of the mix of, I got to get myself out of here, and I also think that I need to be home with my mom. So that's what really drew me to coming back to Durango. I also had overextended myself. Like I knew that I had to have a complete reset if I was going to make it.
Right.
Yeah. And so in terms of leadership, I mean, I've always been a leader. My mom said I came out of the womb the CEO of the family. She's like, you've been the boss forever. So I think that I've always been a natural born leader, but I'm a risk taker, and I push boundaries. And part of it is my personality of the desire to want to be seen, which also can have very toxic outcomes. And I have the ability to do really hard things, and I love to push myself to do hard things. So I've done all kinds of crazy stuff far before moving. That was actually much safer than some of the things that I've done in terms of taking risks. And, I think it's what makes me a disruptive CEO, but now I have a lot more maturity and experience and wisdom, and, I'm not doing drugs, which also helps
that helps
make crazy
a little
decisions.
Bit.
Yes.
Helps kind of harness it a little bit.
Exactly.
Tell me about that, being a disruptive CEO.
Yeah.
I think that's a very interesting choice of words and terminology. I'd love to hear what you mean by that, and how that kind of translates to the real world. A disruptive CEO.
Yeah. So disruptive CEOs inspire, influence, make big change. And I would never have called myself that. I mean, I didn't know that I was going to be a CEO. I never imagined being where I am today. But, that boundary pushing, risk taking, I mean, there's always been something disruptive that has been happening in my life. I like that. I like shaking things up. I like making things happen. Coming to Stoneage, we manufacture industrial cleaning equipment. I say high-tech squirt guns on steroids. I never imagined myself, making sewer cleaning tools or products that go into clean refineries, but it's awesome and I love it. And it's just in a really unique space to do some very disruptive things in industrial manufacturing. And so I just could latch onto that of like, ooh, I see this vision of where technology could really take this dinosaur industry, low-skilled labor industry, and turn it into something that is a skilled trade, a craft,
Yeah.
so to speak. And so I really started pushing the company in a different direction. We basically make nozzles that go on the end of hoses, but I could see where the industry was going to use automation. And so we started stepping towards semi-automation to full automation, now, robotics, and really transforming the industry. So I've done lots of things that have turned, we're the leader in what we do. And so I've done lots of things that have turned the industry
whole
upside
industry,
down.
yeah.
Oh yeah. Where like literally the entire industry, entire global industry is talking about what Stoneage is doing. And it's all to the benefit of making safer products and tools, equipment to do this really important work. And so that's how I look at it too. Stoneage is also employee owned, and that's a very different model. And I have a goal of creating 1,000 millionaires through our employee ownership program.
So cool.
And really changing the narrative of where wealth creation happens in capitalism. Capitalism does not have to be bad, but it needs to work for everyone. And so I love these ideas of like big transformational projects that I can work on and use my ability to inspire movement and action to change the world, to make it a better place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I heard once, whoever told me it is escaping me, but it was a previous guest. I think it was Trevor Bird from Durango Harley Davidson. Yeah. Described capitalism as a situation where both parties thank each other.
Yes.
Exactly. Thank you and thank you, like a true win-win.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, coming in and you had mentioned earlier, that you never even expected to be a CEO, let alone a disruptive CEO and all of these other things. I've also heard you in the past talk about culture and how important, culture is within organizations. I'm curious from your experience, and I'd love to hear your advice even, when you've been, because I can kind of see a few things coming into play when we know that you never really expected or planned on being a CEO. So there's potential for some maybe imposter syndrome or, whatever there early on. Then you layer in this idea of disruptive CEO and these massive changes that you're enacting in your organization. I think it'd be fair to assume that has not always come without resistance or, buy-in from your whole company. I'd love to hear from you from a culture perspective, and when you're trying to make these sincerely massive changes. In fact, I think you recently just had a podcast about large organizational changes. And I'm talking about it more in context of maybe operational changes or these kind of initiatives. Talk me through how you have overcome those, the cultural resistances and organizational buy-in to make to make these large changes actually come to fruition.
Yeah. I think it started early on because, let's face it. So I got hired to be the general manager of Stoneage when I was 28, literally 3 months after my overdose. I had no idea what I was doing. The founders just saw potential in me and they wanted something different. The traditional candidates, white men in their 50s with lots of manufacturing experience and could bring a lot to the table. But they're like, these guys are going to change our company. We have this really cool employee-owned company and we want to do something different. And so they decided to take this risk and hire me. But there was no way I could come in and, even slightly BS my way through this. I had never run a company before. I went to Colorado School of Mines. Our founders, one went to mines, the other one was working there. That's where they came up with their first product. So I had a mines connection with engineering and.
Did you study engineering? Okay.
Yeah, and then I worked in big, huge manufacturing companies. In fact, I was in operations kind of coordination. I didn't actually manage anybody, but we had a P&L that was like 8 times the size of what Stoneage. It was a tiny little company, like $8 million in revenue when I started. And so they decided to take this risk on me and say, she's never done this stuff before, but she's got all of the right pieces and a great attitude and she wants to learn. So let's do it.
How insightful of them, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
I just think that's so cool.
And now that I knew nothing about founder transitions and how often they fail and how hard it is, now that I know what I know, it truly is remarkable. And I don't know that it would have worked with anybody but a person like me, and our founders. Maybe, but it was a very special thing, and it's worked out really well for all of us. But I had to go in and trust that the 32 other people there, because I was employee 33, that 32 other people there knew what the problems were and had ideas on how to fix it. And I had to learn the industry. So I just asked a bunch of questions. What do you think? How should we fix this? What would be your suggestion? And so I took more of like a coaching approach because I also could learn from them. And I didn't have to be the ones coming up with the ideas because I didn't know how to solve some of these problems. I just helped then, okay, I can make stuff happen. So that's a great idea. Let's go figure out how to push it through. And so I built credibility really fast with a lot of our employees, not all of them, but a lot of them, because I just took this coaching kind of partnership approach. I didn't come in and think I knew it all. And I had some really big successes early on, fixing some of the pain points that a lot of people were struggling with. And so that really helped. And I learned from that. Like, how do you bring people along? Well, you ask their opinions and you let them be part of the solution. Not everybody bought into that. Still, not everybody does. I'm not everybody's cup of tea. No one person is.
Right.
And especially leaders with strong personalities. But I think because I learned early on that if I bring people along for the journey and I let them solve the problems and I just support them, then they have buy-in and they feel part of things and they feel really proud of the accomplishments that they had. And it doesn't have to be me as a leader who's like, oh, I came in and saved the day. Right? It can be the team. And I think that that's what has helped me, not just within my company, but within the industry. Because I've had some naysayers in the industry too. Some people like who've actively blocked change that we've needed to make as an industry because they just do not want. There cannot be a young woman who has no idea about this industry who's going to come in here and tell us that we need to change things. So I think that's kind of the approach that I've taken.
What's the saying? The most dangerous thing you can say is we've always done it that way.
Oh, I hate that, right? Do not tell me that.
We've always done it that way.
Yeah,
That's
exactly. Or I've tried that and it didn't work. So, knock that. And it's like, are you sure? I think that we can be so closed-minded because we're afraid to change.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I think it's interesting, just looking back on where you were at that stage in your career. Mm-hmm. I think that's interesting. And I'm curious, obviously now I could see where you would have the confidence to kind of have that inquisitive, bring the team along. I've got enough confidence to ask questions and things like that. I think it's fascinating that you had that level of confidence early on in your career. Did that come from, was that a learned skill? Was that from an authentic approach from you in terms of, I genuinely don't know and want to learn? And how did you balance that with the perception of being a strong leader and also the confidence of saying, I don't know, and getting the team involved? Because I think that's a very, coming from my perspective, I think that's an amazing approach, something that I work on myself too. But it's a delicate balance. And I would just love to hear how you were able to adopt that at the early stages of your career. Because I obviously know how we could do it. Now there's a stack of evidence and it's easier done now. But those early days, I'd love to hear, how you adopted that leadership style early on.
Yeah, so I think it starts with an innate curiosity. I am truly interested in learning and I am very curious about people. And so I've always been a good question asker. And in fact, I feel like that's one of my superpowers is the ability to ask people questions. And then because I'm actually a really good listener too, and I listen intently and then I can pull on a word. Okay, well, wait, you said, what did you mean exactly by that word? And so I can pull, I call it pulling threads and getting people to, tell me what they really think or, get vulnerable or do, it creates psychological safety, I should say. In fact, people will be like, I am not going in, and I'm going into her office and I am not going to tell her. And the next thing you know, I've got them telling me something and I was not going to tell you that. So I think that's just part of being a very curious person and being genuinely interested in learning other people and learning how things work. And so I think that has always helped me. I've always felt confident in my intelligence. School was always easy for me. I went through engineering school and, hardly did anything and, made it through. I didn't like get straight A's or anything, but I always knew that the way that my brain worked was that I could see simple solutions to complex problems. So there's this complex problem. If we break it down like this, like this, like this, like this, here's how we can solve it. And so I think that combination of being curious and then being able to synthesize, and I didn't know that's what I was doing. I would never have used those words, but being able to synthesize a tough problem and break it down and communicate it clearly, that's what really helped me in those early days. So I've had lots of self-confidence issues, but that's been primarily around body image and maybe athleticism, but not ever in my intelligence. I always knew that I was smart enough to be able to solve really tough problems.
Yeah. When you talk about that ability to, I don't know, analyze those other factors of from a problem solving perspective, one of the things that I've found, in my president role now and CEO role is I don't have an advisory board, which would be amazing. I joke my dad's my advisory board, but he says you get what you pay for. So I don't have much of one, but I'm finding some challenges in unintended consequences. Like if we do this, this person might react that way, or this could happen this way, or that could impact, these clients. I'm curious because it seems like, from your problem solving mindset, you're able to kind of see the complexities of a problem and how to solve it simply. Does that apply also though to looking forward to the consequences after the problem is solved? And I'm just kind of curious because it's kind of where I'm at right now is looking forward. And I'm just curious if that's a reality in your world or not.
Yeah. And I've definitely made decisions that had consequences that I did not foresee coming. And so that's taught me to try to anticipate. But it's called like future priming. Like what are the different possibilities that could happen here? And how do I prime my brain to see when those things are happening so that I can adjust, react, modify to it sooner. And so that's where I think curiosity comes and really being able to look at, okay, if I did this, what's the outcome? And how would this competitor react? How would these clients react? Okay, let's look at a different scenario here and kind of talking through those things. Sometimes you get it right, sometimes you don't. I mean, you have no idea how people are going to respond. But that's one of the things I really like to try to put myself into other people's shoes and go, okay, what do I think that person's going to do? So I'm especially now that I've been in the industry for 17 years, I'm very surprised, I'm often not, let me say that again. I am very little surprised.
Rarely surprised.
Rarely. Thank you. That's the word I'm looking for. I am rarely surprised when somebody makes a strategic move because I've been thinking a lot about, okay, if I was this competitor, here's how I would, here's what I would do to make sure I was competing with Stoneage, or here's how I would position myself in the industry. And so I like to try to do that. And then, you position the company to either, block those off at the forefront, or okay, if this happens, here's what we're going to do.
Right.
Yeah. So it's fun. Strategy, right? That's strategy.
Yeah.
It's trying to peer into the future and make your best guess at what you think is going to happen.
And we all have a crystal ball. It's easy.
Oh yeah, so easy.
Wave the magic wand, look at the crystal ball.
Oh, can I borrow yours? Because mine's kind of foggy.
Mine got worn out, so I'm sorry, but
it was so good. It was so good that I just
I used it too much. You made a social post at the beginning of the year that I'm wanting you to dive deeper on.
Okay.
You wrote 4 lessons that you had learned last year. I don't know if you even remember this post or not.
I remember the post. You have to tell me what I wrote.
I'm going to tell you.
Okay.
Yeah. And I would love it if I'll read these to you one at a time.
Yeah.
And I would love it if you unpacked it for me.
Sure.
So the first thing that you learned last year was that freaking out never makes things better. Instead, stay calm.
Yes.
Tell me about that.
Oh, gosh. Okay. So this comes from some really tough feedback that I got long before last year. And I had an executive who was working for me. And I think I told this story in the keynote that you heard. And we were butting heads on his future in the company. And he got really angry with me and told me that I was really hard to work for and I was erratic. I'm not disruptive. You think you're a disruptive CEO. Really, you're erratic. And it was a really painful feedback to receive. And after I got myself into a calmer place and I could really say, all right, how do I own this? Because I think there's always a way to own at least part of the feedback. And when you own the feedback, you empower yourself to do something about it. I could see how my intensity, my fast moving style, and this vision for the future, it was leaving people behind because I wasn't really connecting the dots for people. And
meaning like you weren't communicating the vision properly?
Yeah, we would talk about where we think things are going to be in 3 years, but I was thinking 10 years. And, most people can't see that far. And so, and this is part of the transition from doing manual tools to technology. I mean, now we're building software. Like I foresaw all of this and was positioning the company, but you have a lot of people who've been with the company going like, we're mechanical engineers. We just build tools that go on the end of nozzles. Why are we interested in software companies, right? And so I got really, really clear on the vision and how to communicate that. And I also realized that my passion and intensity can sometimes come across the wrong way. It can come across as aggressive, or that I'm upset, or that I'm demanding action when really I'm not. And so I've been really working on this cool, calm, and collected leadership style. But it's hard to bring that into other relationships, like your marriage, for example. And so, I would go and have be able to be unflappable and handle all of these things at work. But then I was finding that I was inappropriately reacting at home, and I freaking lost it on my son. I had a crazy day. I came home and I was on adrenal overload, but instead of just going and sitting down and meditating, I'm like, I'm going to get on the Peloton and do a really hard workout. So that just, of course, taps out your adrenals anymore. And my son came in and he wanted me to buy him whatever V-Bucks on Fortnite. And he kept asking me and asking me and asking me. And I literally grabbed onto the handles and I was like, I hate that effing game. It is ruining this family. And I lost my breath and I was just like, oh my God. And it just completely run over with stress hormones. And I got myself calmed down, and my son walked out of the room and he came back in and he had these big crocodile tears and he says, Mom, you don't need to react that way. That was scary.
Wow.
Why did you react like that? And I just realized in that moment, you cannot freak out. That did not make anything better. I don't feel better. Now I have to go deal with, all of the stress hormones all the adrenaline that I just released in my body. I have to make things okay with my son. And I really need to think about what this looks like and why am I not bringing cool, calm, and collected home? And so that was where that story came from. It's I don't want to be that mom who freaks out. I do hate that game, and I do think that it ruins lives. And it's taking the society, one of the many things that are taking society in a bad place. But that doesn't mean that I need to yell at my 10-year-old son, because he's being a 10-year-old and begging for something. I did that too.
Yeah,
mine was just a Cabbage Patch doll,
right?
Not a video game,
right?
So that's where that came from.
That's fascinating. I relate to that more than you know. I think we have pretty similar personalities in terms of, the aggressive nature with which we lead and the intensity and things like that. And, for me, it's usually passion driven. It's usually because I care a ton. And it usually comes from a place of, usually comes with very good intentions. But I have found myself doing the same thing. And what's interesting, it's almost refreshing to hear you, misery loves company, but I've almost justified it sometimes of I'm under so much stress at work and I'm doing all this for my family and, I'm trying to make a good life. I've almost caught myself on occasion, wearing it like a badge, of I don't know, brushing it away, but also realizing I cannot act like that. I've got to be, what's it all for if I don't have a good relationship with my wife and my kids and, all of that anyway. No. So the way I've been framing it recently is I'm working on responding rather than reacting.
Yep.
Because I have a tendency, it seems like, similar to your personality too, of I want to move quick. And usually I know the answer. Like usually I know what needs to happen. But the delivery of that is what I'm working on, because it's like, this email can't wait.
Yeah.
I'm sending the email right now. I mean, even, driving, I'm like, gosh, dang it, I know better. I can't type up this email while I'm driving or, I'm with the kids or whatever. So it's just, anyway, it's interesting to hear how that translates between your personal world and your life world. And the takeaway and the lesson for everybody listening is that freaking out never makes things better.
No.
Instead, stay calm.
Stay calm. Just one of the things, the mantras that I've been living by, and I'm trying to do this at work and at home, is that, a lot of leaders, as we evolve and we become more self-aware, we think about the impact that we have on others. And so we tend to stop at this, like, oh, how are other people experiencing me? Okay, I want to be cool, calm, and collected. I want my employees to experience me as unflappable. But really the key is not how people experience you as a leader, it's how they experience themselves in the presence of your leadership. And,
tell me more about that.
Right. So it's about, are you inspiring people to be their best, or are you inspiring people to cower? Are you creating safety where people feel comfortable saying, I disagree, I don't think this is a good idea? Or are you creating that experience for them where they feel like, oh, I can't say something? So it's really not about them. It's not really about yourself. It's really about, do they feel like do they believe in themselves? Do you inspire them to believe in themselves, to solve their own problems, to figure out this conflict, to go after a dream? And that isn't you. That's you inspiring them to believe in themselves. And if you think about it, at least for me, the very best mentors that I've had, or like my mom, it's never been about my experience of her. It's been the things that she's said to me, the things that she's held me accountable on, that have made me go, you know what? I can do this. I can do this. I can fix this. I can solve this problem. I can go after it. That's what real leadership is. It's about inspiring people to be their very best, to, helping them unleash their potential. And we need to do that with our families too, right? How do you want your child to experience themselves in your presence? And I feel that really strongly. My dad left when I was really young, and he was in and out of my life. And I would remember being so excited for him to come and visit, come home, and it was a weird family situation. And then within the first day, it was like, oh my God, I cannot wait until he leaves, because I was scared and I felt insecure and I felt unloved. And, he would try to catch me in the goodie cabinet, getting a Twinkie and going like, don't eat that. You're going to be fatter than you already are. That, I'm sure in his mind, he was trying to help me, right? Don't eat that Twinkie. You're going to be fat. You'll regret that later on, which, of course I did. But that wasn't how I experienced it. I experienced shame.
Right.
And embarrassment. And I didn't like myself for those things. And that is how I experienced myself in his presence. So I remember that now. I really am using that as my mantra with anybody who I interact with. It's not about how they're experiencing me. How are they experiencing themselves? Do they walk away feeling like, I can do this? Do they walk away feeling self-empowered, believing in themselves, going after it? And I think that is a important shift that I think if leaders could make, they would really truly make it about other people. We talk a lot about servant leadership, but I think that's just such a different way to frame it, because it's about, how do you help people be their very best, whether it's your family or your employees.
I love that. And what a great way, because my servant leadership's sitting on my desk. I love that book. But a good way to reframe it it's about, setting them up for success, and that they're the best version of themselves around you. And then translating that into I'm reflecting and thinking it's interesting too, because in my life, and professionally and personally, I'm the harshest on the people I care the most about. And a lot of times that's backfires, like I should not do that at all. I'm harder on people. Just this weekend, we're working on my oldest son riding a two-wheeler. And it was a test of patience for a dad, for sure. And I had to kind of balance, like, how hard do I push him versus making it fun and cheering him on when he has a little bit of win and whatever. And anyway, it was just interesting to get very intentional about things like that. And I've got some employees too that, I have to be careful about how hard I push but they're the people that I like the most, they're the people I see the most potential in and things like that. So I love that ability to reframe it of it's about just setting them up to be the best versions of themselves when they're around you. It's almost just empowering. It reminds me of another concept too, this idea of like rescuing. And I have a tendency sometimes to, in an intention to be helpful, to take a problem. Like, hey, let me take that one for you. I've got that. And what I've realized, and I'm learning slowly but surely, is that every time we do that, we rob them of an opportunity to grow.
Absolutely.
And it does the exact opposite of what we were intending to have happen, which is such a weird reality to sit with. Like, I tried to have the opposite happen, and I caused literally the exact opposite from what I wanted to have occur. But setting people up to grow is what a great service to them. I love that. Thanks for helping me reframe the thought on it, because I've subscribed to that forever, but never have thought about letting them be the best versions of themselves. That's awesome.
You don't want your kids to be insecure. You don't want your employees to feel insecure. But when you're in a position of power, the words that you say and how you say them can either build people up or it can tear people down.
Yeah.
And if you want people who have the ownership mindset, and you want your kids to have the ownership mindset, which is the most empowering mindset you can have, you have to realize that you're part of that. And so how do you build people's self-esteem? And that doesn't mean that you don't have hard conversations or you don't hold them accountable, but it's all towards the effort of building rather than tearing down.
Yeah. Love it.
Yeah.
And we're going to dive into the ownership mindset too.
Of course.
I promise you that.
Yeah, no problem.
Hard work pays off.
Yeah.
But it takes time to see it to fruition.
Yeah. Yes. So being a really impatient person, right? I want to see the fruits of my labor immediately.
Yesterday.
Yeah. And writing the book, that was one of the hardest things that I've done. I wrote it during COVID. And so you have to get through the process of writing the book, and then you get to get through the process of editing, and then marketing and getting ready for launch. And you don't know how it's all going to play out. And it can feel really frustrating, like it's moving slow, and I have all of these goals, and I'm visualizing and I'm manifesting, and it's not moving the way that I want it to. But the universe, it has, it's going to know the best time for you and the lessons that you need to learn if you are willing to learn them. And so going through the process of writing the book and not having it go as fast as I wanted it to go, and feeling like this thing is going to be a flop because, I don't have the pre-sales that I need 4 months out, and XYZ, I'm not hitting these targets. When I launched the book, it was a huge success. And I had spent 2.5 years of feeling like it wasn't moving fast enough, and that my hard work wasn't paying off. And was this really worth me doing it? And I had imposter syndrome with it. And then when everything started to come together, and it was a tremendous success, and all these other opportunities opened up because of it, it was like, oh, it paid off. And then I was named Entrepreneur of the Year by Ernst & Young, and I won Colorado CEO of the Year. And it was just like all of this stuff that I've been working towards with building this platform around ownership thinking, around employee ownership, changing the narrative where wealth creation happens in capitalism. Is anybody paying attention? And then all of a sudden it was like, it is, and it's making an impact. People are actually doing things differently because of the way that Stoneage is role modeling and the way that we're building out this platform. And so, it just all came together. 2023 was just an amazing year with kind of of everything just coming together and going like, wow, this is all paid off.
An overnight success, 20 years in the making.
It was exactly. No. Yeah. I think people forget. It's easy to see like, oh, this person just went from here to here. And that's never true.
Yeah.
Ever. People always have to, you're always going through trials and tribulations. Some people certainly have more privilege and maybe don't have as traumatic of self-inflicted experiences like I had. But we all have to grow and learn, and none of us are an overnight success.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've heard that people oftentimes greatly overestimate what we can accomplish in a year
Yeah.
and greatly underestimate what we can accomplish in 10.
Yep.
And I think there's power in changing our time horizon perspectives.
Yeah.
I'm in the same. It's funny now that I'm getting to know you on more of a personal level. The personality traits that we share.
Yeah.
I'm very impatient as well, and I need success yesterday. I need the fruits of my labor to happen yesterday. I joke that I just need perfection yesterday. But I think it's a good reminder for people that are trying to build something that it's going to take longer than you think.
Yes.
And to trust the process. I am loving the process of podcasting because I get to have conversations like this. I get to meet amazing people. And I don't have a huge audience yet, but it's growing slowly but surely. But I was telling my wife, I was like, all I have to do is an episode a week for the next 20 years.
Yeah.
And then I'll be somewhere. But I do think that there's the ability to recognize that your hard work isn't wasted. It just hasn't come to fruition yet is almost freeing.
Yep.
It's kind of empowering to be like, of course I don't have results yet. What did I think?
Yeah.
This is going to take a long time.
Yep.
There's also, I don't know if you've read the 10X rule or not, but that idea that you got to set your goals 10 times bigger than you think, but you also need to recognize it's going to take 10 times the work and 10 times as long and 10 times the capital and, all that stuff.
Exactly.
But I just love that hard work will pay off. It's just going to take longer to come to fruition than you realize, because so much of this stuff, especially for me, I've got the entrepreneur hat on and, it's like, the highs are high, the lows are low and that thing. But I think having that perspective helps with resiliency, like weathering the lows and the highs of knowing that it's not for nothing.
No.
It just hasn't happened yet.
Exactly. And I think that's the power of consistency. And consistency is probably like the most underrated value or trait that we can have. But really, if you consistently do one small thing every day to move the ball down the field, and it might just feel like it's really small, but you do that every day, that's way more powerful than it is to say, okay, I'm not going to do anything and then I'm going to do this big push.
Yeah.
Then I'm not going to do anything and I'm going to do this big push. Like that consistency creates discipline. It allows you to practice, and that's how we get better at things. That's how we become experts. That's how we find our purpose and meaning in work, is that we practice at doing things that we enjoy. And so I think that consistency is a big piece of it. And that's what I've definitely learned throughout this whole process, and that the hard work does pay off, but it pays off only if you are just consistently going like, this is my vision, this is what I want for myself. I'm going to do the work every single day, even if it just seems like this tiny little baby step. I'm going to do that. And pretty soon, here you are, like 17 years later with a book and, and this great company and doing all of these really important things that are high impact in a place that you're passionate about.
Yeah.
So,
I always say that trajectory is more important than velocity.
Yes, absolutely.
Where we're headed matters way more than the speed in which we're going there.
Exactly.
So I'm curious, though, knowing that, looking back the last 17 years, were there times when you're wondering if all this was going to be worth it? Were there times when you're like, man, it's not going to happen the way I thought it would? I mean, have there been those self-doubt moments?
Yeah. I absolutely. I mean, I think anybody who says that they don't have any doubts would be lying to you. I've had feelings like, maybe I should go do something different. Can I move this fast enough to help me achieve the goals that I want to achieve? Because it's moving really slow. A lot of question of, did I make the right decision? And if I didn't make if it wasn't the right decision, what is the consequence to the company? Is it going to hurt the company? So questioning my decision making and things like that. And I still think it. We're always growing, and I hope I never know what I want to do when I grow up. And I love what I do now, but I know that there's a life after being the CEO of Stoneage. And so I'm not, I'm working towards opening doors that will create that clarity. but I don't know where life is going to take me. But I do know that I want life after Stoneage. And so what exactly does that look like? And what am I doing now that's going to position me to, make that bigger impact that I want on a bigger stage eventually. And so, but what I've learned is that just do that consistent work and it will happen, even if you have setbacks, even if you don't achieve a goal, or even if self-doubt creeps in to say like, am I really doing the right thing? Okay, you know what? I trust the universe. I'm going to just keep on doing my consistent work. And I know that the right door is going to open when I'm ready for it.
Yeah. Well, and that's one of the great things about this wild ride that we're all on is we're building ourselves too. So we can make a wrong business decision or have something take longer than it takes, or make a mistake or try something new or whatever. The great thing is, and that's what it's given me confidence lately, or maybe some reassurance of knowing that I'm also growing a ton.
Exactly.
So even if, I've made a mistake or something structured wrong or, whatever it might be, I'm a different version of myself than I was yesterday, or a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, whatever it might be. And for me, that gives me a lot of confidence because I feel like, I don't know, it's kind of like the things we're building matter, but sometimes we lose sight of the fact that we're building ourselves while we're at it. And the version of ourselves that we're becoming, we know a whole lot more than we used to know. A whole lot more experience, even if it comes from mistakes or whatever it might be.
It does come from mistakes. I mean, no one ever looks at something that went really well and goes, "Oh, I learned so much from that." So I say embrace the mistake. We're human. Like, we're supposed to make mistakes. That's how we learn. I mean, we look at us as babies, right? We are figuring out how to roll over, crawl, walk. Like, we don't know how to do anything. And the only way to figure it out is to take some risks, to fall down, to hurt yourself, to cry a little bit, and then pick yourself back up. But as we age, as we get older, it gets scarier and scarier to take those risks, right? We have fear of failure and fear of judgment and all of those things that we lose that we don't have when we're babies, figuring out, how to get on our own 2 feet. And so I always try, whenever I feel that self-doubt coming in and I'm questioning if I should do something, I try to just remind myself, like, what would my 1-year-old self do? Like, get up and figure out how to walk, even if it hurts if you fall down. So I don't think people should be afraid of making mistakes. I think you should embrace mistakes, but you have to analyze them and learn from them and implement those lessons so that you hopefully don't make it again.
Right.
To really find that true growth.
Right. I love it.
Yeah.
Hard work pays off.
Yep.
But it takes time to see it to fruition.
That's right. Yeah.
The third one you wrote was that great friendships make all the difference, and to invest in them.
Yeah. So I have had some really great friends in my life, and then kind of in the last, really when I moved back here, and I just had to get myself together, and I was really careful about who I hung out with so that I wouldn't put myself into positions that I didn't want to be put into. I kind of kept friends away. I didn't develop a lot of like really deep friendships when I moved back here, and I only stayed in touch with a few people from my past life. And so as I've gotten older and I've really realized, like, what is life really about if you don't have these strong relationships and strong friendships? I'm not making time to cultivate them. And so I decided that I was going to recultivate friendships that from the past and make sure that those friends are lifelong friends, and that I did a better job of caring for and investing in the friendships that I did have since I had moved here. And so I put the work into it. And I mean, I just was in Washington, D.C. a couple weeks ago, and I saw one of my friends that we've been friends for like 25 years, my best friend from college, who also, we went down the drug spiral together, and we never had a falling out, but, drugs make things weird. And so we lost our way, our friendship along the way. I just was down in Miami and saw her. And so I've really put the effort back into another high school friend who lives in Phoenix. I've seen her. I probably saw her like 3 or 4 times last year. And so I've really just put that back in, and I've had so much fun. And I realized, like, it isn't this huge time commitment, because that was always my excuse. Like, I am so busy running a company, building a platform, raising a son and making sure that I'm taking care of myself because I'm a huge exerciser. I mean, I just moved my drug addiction to exercise addiction. That I did actually have time to be able to maintain friendships. It doesn't mean that I have to have weekend plans every single weekend with my friends, but that I could have those meaningful connections and conversations and cultivate those relationships. And so my life is so much more enriched because I've rekindled those and I've invested in friendships.
I love it because, I've had some recent clarity lately as well about the importance of friendships. I got pretty much all consumed in business, entrepreneurship and raising a family and whatever, but and kind of a growth mindset. I've been on a little bit of a self-development journey too. And realize though it's not worth anything if we don't have people to share it with.
I know.
And part of it's been interesting for me to see. I realize that a lot of sometimes my sort of arm's length relationships, now that I'm at a better place, were because of my own insecurities. Yeah. And I'd sometimes justified it as, I'm on a path, or I'm doing this thing, or I'm busy, or
they don't get it.
It's like, you don't understand. Totally. You have a job. I have no one signs my paychecks or whatever. And I realized that that's just me being insecure, and that we need each other. Yes. I ran the Buffalo Run 100 a couple weeks ago, and we filmed the whole thing, which it's going to be really cool. But a lot of the runners kind of do it solo, but throughout the race, there's aid stations, and some of them crew can come in. So my wife was my crew chief. My dad was there. I ran the whole race with a really good friend. My business partner was there supporting. My videographer was there. Our account executive was there helping. And it was just like one of the neat, and I had and then when I finished the race too, my grandma was there, both of my aunts, my mom, so awesome. My kids. I mean, you talk about a little bit absurd almost, to be honest.
Yeah, but it's a huge accomplishment.
But I got no shame. Yeah. I want the biggest community, the biggest support. It made it all so much sweeter to share it with people. Yeah. And it was a powerful moment for me to reflect and be like, how lucky am I that 10 people were here cheering for me and actively supporting me. Yeah. It was profound. It gave me true, overwhelming gratitude for the people that were in my life. And I was getting, and that was the people that were physically there while I was running. I mean, I got hundreds of text messages and, Instagram messages. And I, as the race progressed, I got worse at updating my Instagram. So I had people a little bit worried, like, are you alive? How's it going? I'm like, I'm just struggling, man. But it was cool to see afterwards. And anyway, I love that one because for me, and it's been the last year, in a very powerful way, a reprioritization of community and friendships, and especially those lifelong ones that, we maybe let get on autopilot and realize and I don't know, for me, we're, my male friends, men friends, sometimes we're not very good about telling each other that we like each other.
Yeah, absolutely.
And realizing how important that is too. So I love that one. Yep. Great friendships make all the difference. Invest in them.
That's right.
It's awesome.
Yep.
Life is so much better when you live the life you want.
Yes.
Tell me about that.
Oh gosh, how many of us live our lives for other people? And I spent so many years doing that. I went to engineering school, not because I wanted to be an engineer, but because I wanted people to see me as smart. I wanted my dad to think I was smart enough to graduate from engineering school. And that was part of, my downward spiral, is that I was just living my life for other people. And it kind of came back in when I started to write this book and really start putting my leadership thoughts out on social media. I had so many people, including my employees, like, what are you doing? Why are you doing this? And I was like, I want to share. Like, I have a voice. I have a gift of being able to use words to make a difference. And it's really fulfilling. And so I'm doing it because I want to. But I had a lot of insecurities come up about it. Like, okay, what are people going to think that I did write this book, and that I am putting all these posts out on social media, and that I started my podcast, and that doubt crept in. And I pushed aside because this is what I want to do. And it doesn't matter that somebody says, oh, a CEO of the company should just be the CEO of the company. I can do what I want to do. And luckily I run a company where we encourage people to live their dreams.
Yeah.
And it isn't just all about, 9 to 5 at the job. And so I flipped my mindset and said, I'm role modeling. I'm going after the things that I want. I've always wanted to write a book long before I came to Stoneage. Podcasting and interviewing, I've always been really great at asking questions. Like, I want to do this. I'm going to. But I did absolutely feel like I had to justify myself sometimes to people in the industry, to some of my employees who questioned it, which I'm super proud of them for asking that. That's a scary thing to say.
Justifying it in the sense that it would positively impact your professional role as a CEO, or justify it as like, where did you feel the need to justify?
I think justify that it was okay that I was doing it. I remember I was on a podcast, and the whole and I knew that the podcast was going to be about this. Like, we prepped for it, and he was like, I'm really going to push you on, this whole idea of focus. If you're not focused on just being the CEO, are you doing your job as good as you possibly could?
Fair question.
And so I said, I'm game. Let's do it. Let's see where this goes. And I was really glad that he did it, because I felt like, and it was a justification but I was prepared for it. And I did. I shared, like, this is how this is better. One, I am so energized and I am living my best life. And that makes me have more energy to be able to put into my company. The second thing is if I only put all of my energy into the company, like, I drive people crazy. Yeah. And I have, where people are like, time out. Like, you can't come over here and ideate all over me, like, stop. And so it gave me an outlet to be able to use my creativity and put that passion there, so that it wasn't just driving the company to do things that we just physically could not achieve. And I'm living this role model of, hey, we don't have to just say that our vocation is just what we do within the walls of our company. We all have dreams and goals and aspirations that have nothing to do with our titles. And I truly believe that. And I want all of my employees to be able to live those dreams. And if I am holding back and saying, I really want to do this, I really want to write a book, and I want to be a thought leader in this space, then what am I doing?
Yeah.
And so those were the types of justification that I felt like I had to do when people, like, questioned me. And, some of it was a justification. I think that's what it was. It was like, yeah. And then part of it was like, you know what, screw it. I am doing what I want to do, and it makes me happy. And I think we should all do that. So as I was going through this process of getting ready to launch my book and all the big push and so much self-promotion, I mean, I wanted to, like, throw up at the end. I was like, I am so done talking about myself. But I realized, like, you know what? I'm living my life for me. And if I didn't do all of these things because I was worried about what people were going to think of me, and I wanted to be perceived as, this
like
type of CEO, then I'm not living my life for myself. And so it was a really empowering process that I went through, with having some of those doubts and having some of those people push back on me, and then just getting really confident in going, you know what, like, it really goes back to my overdose. And that's what became crystal clear, especially writing this book, was I'm here for a reason. I should have died that day on Labor Day of 2006, and I didn't. And so why would I not go after it and
go all in?
All in, like, live the biggest life that I know that I can live, and help as many people as I possibly can, and do some of these things that are going to potentially, like, creating 1,000 millionaires. Like, how amazing is that? Really, truly changing the trajectory of people's lives.
Yeah.
If we can influence change at the federal level around employee ownership, worker ownership is such a great thing, where people can truly benefit from the success of the company. And it's not just in wealth creation, but it's in engagement and purpose and meaning, which then you go home happier, and then your families are happier and your communities are happier. Like, if I can somehow just put my little dent in that space by speaking up and creating this platform and really going for it, then I've lived a life worth living that I had a second chance to live. And so that's why I wrote that, because there were a lot of people who were like, why are you doing this? And it made me stop and think, like, should I be doing this?
Yeah.
No. Yes, I should be doing this.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Do you think that it's been a positive impact on your CEO role? Neutral?
Oh, definitely a positive
Yeah.
impact. Yeah. I mean, one, people from a recruiting perspective, I mean, people comment like, I want to work at Stoneage. I want to work under that kind of leadership. And my podcast is huge on that. My book, my articles out there, 100%. It has been a recruiting tool for us. It's also really clear within the company, like what kind of leader I am and how we run the company. And, you know, and we have the Own It mindset, which is in the book. But having that book, like people understand, like this is what this company is.
They know what they're,
yeah. And it's also a tool to hold us accountable as a leadership team. Like if we're not living the principles that
from the book we wrote,
then, you know, then what are we doing here? Which is going to happen. All companies and cultures ebb and flow. So yeah, I think it's had a tremendous impact. And what it really did is that writing it down and going through the work of, and I picked out every single word in there, and there's a couple of mistakes in the book, and I'm going to fix them for the next round, but every single word I thought about, and it crystallized my view on leadership. And so that is what was incredibly helpful about doing all of this is, and all the interviews that I've done with so many amazing leaders on the podcast, like I have seeped myself in leadership.
Yeah.
And that's a really cool thing. Like I can say, like, I'm an expert in leadership because I have not only been there and done it, but I've interviewed hundreds of people, and I have really gotten intentional with my beliefs around what good leadership is.
Right.
And that's how it's benefited me.
No, I love it. And there's something so true about living the life that you want to live. Even for me, so I came from a corporate background, and I climbed the corporate ladder, and I did well for myself. In fact, I was really proud of, you know, how I progressed. But it came to that moment of like, I don't belong here.
Yeah.
Kind of that idea of you got to go where you're celebrated, not where you're tolerated.
Yep.
And so I was terrified, you know, and took the leap and started Ascent and did all that. But early on, I got to just be who I wanted to be. I got to live the life that I wanted to live. So I would, you know, we wear t-shirts and I wear my hat and I'm authentic to who I am. But I also got to like bring humor.
Yeah.
I remember clearly early on, we had a huge proposal meeting, and we were with clients in Florida, and I took the proposal meeting out in the courtyard, and I made the video, made sure that they saw the palm trees behind me, and I like made a joke about, oh, sorry, you know, it's snowing back there or whatever. And we ended up landing the account, and it was so fun for me to be like, the true version of myself works.
Yeah.
And I get to lean into that. And I think that there's power in that for everybody, and realizing that we all are different for a reason. We all have different strengths. We all have different personalities. And now, like every single day, I go and I exercise every single day for usually 90 minutes. I leave the office. I'm very open about it. It's part of our culture, and I encourage everybody else to do it too. And then these, like for me now, this kind of new version of it, which is podcasting and my ultra running and things like that, it has filled me up in such a profound way that then it has let me give the company way more energy than I would have. And it's also had unintended benefits, like people that I've met, conversations that we've had, things that I've learned. It's just I love that there's so much power. I think sometimes people are so scared to live their authentic life because of appearances or expectations
social
or
pressures.
This is what we're supposed to do. What even does that mean? Like, you know, who says supposed to what? You know, who even makes those rules? And I love that idea of kind of removing those stigmas and living the life that we want to live and chasing our passions. I had this podcast. So before I started the company, I thought a podcast would be really fun. And I thought it'd be cool for like a prospecting tool. So originally I was thinking, I'll have this like business building podcast, and I'll reach out to business owners, see if they'll be on my podcast, and that's how I'll
Convert
like get
'em.
in,
Yeah.
yeah. And it sat in the closet for years, because I didn't prioritize it. And finally, I'm like, I'm gonna do the podcast, and it's been so fun.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd sit and work till I don't even know what time it is right
Yeah.
now, but we're way after hours,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
working late, and it's just because it fills me back up, and there's just so much power in that. I think that, and I believe it was in your keynote, and if not, I apologize. You at least touched on it. That self-care is a discipline, not a luxury.
Exactly.
Yeah, that was you.
That was
okay,
me.
thank goodness. Tell me about that. Self-care being a discipline and not a luxury. Why does that matter?
Yeah, I mean, if we're not taking care of ourselves and we can't show up as our best selves, especially as leaders, you need to be the very best for your employees and for your family. But if you are burnt out and you aren't exercising and not eating right, you're not going to have the energy. You're not going to have the mental clarity to make really good decisions and to be an inspiring leader. And so that's why I think self-care is a discipline. You have to be disciplined in it. And it's different for everybody. And my husband teases me. He's like, your self-care routine is like no one else's. He's like, it's like a job.
What's your self-care routine? Now I got to know.
Well, I get up between 4 and 4:30 every morning, and I work out for an hour and a half. I meditate. I sit in my sauna and meditate for about, it depends on how much time I have, but 15 to 20 minutes every morning. I get a weekly massage, and I am a cryomed. I love cryomed. So I go and do like full body cryo or red lights, IV drips. But you know what? I've not been sick, literally not even the sniffles in probably 3.5 years.
Yeah.
And that's great. Like I am not sitting there missing out on leading the company because I have another cold or caught COVID or have the flu or have a migraine or all of those things. And so I just show up better. I have the energy after work to play with my 11-year-old son and cook dinner every night, and it feels really good. And I can give my best. So, people's self-care routines don't have to look like mine. I just choose to prioritize my time that way. But I think that the biggest things are sleep. Number 1, sleep. Number 2, hydration. Number 3, eat right. Number 4, meditate. And then do one thing that just makes you feel good, whether that's I like to go for a walk in nature by myself, or I like to get a massage, or I get acupuncture, or, I play the guitar, whatever that is that just brings you joy, makes you feel great. Like do a little bit of that every week, and that will make you have so much more energy, and you'll be in such a much better place to show up as the kind of person you want to be. But when we feel like crap, that comes, that's our energy that we're giving out.
Yeah. Yeah, no doubt. I had a bad night's sleep last night, and I noticed it clearly today. It's wild. Like one bad night's sleep, and I could tell with, a problem would come up, and I had that moment of like, and that's not like me. Usually it's like, let's deal with the problem. But I love that idea too of reframing self-care into a discipline and not a luxury. Like we owe it to the people we care about to be the best versions of ourselves. They're our company, our employees, our family. I think that's such a powerful message that needs to be spread louder so that we can shamelessly indulge in self-care. Just yesterday, my wife and I, we met up at noon on our lunch break and went on a trail run. And I was thinking, how cool is this? 12 o'clock on a Tuesday. We're in the sunshine. We're running, beautiful weather. And then we go back to our work and get stuff done. But being able to do that guilt-free for people is what's important.
I think people feel guilty, and I definitely have done that, where it's like, I'm going to go for a mountain bike right after work. I'm going to leave work a little bit early. Oh, I feel guilty. Should I do that? Let that shit go. Like literally, you can make time, and there's always going to be more work to be done in the hours of a day. So prioritize it. And there's all kinds of ways to sneak it in. I mean, that's the number one excuse that I hear is I don't have time. Yeah, right. Okay, so the 20 minutes that you were just scrolling on Instagram, go for a walk instead. And meeting, go for a walk, right? Taking 5 minutes just to take a few deep breaths. I promise you have 5 minutes for breathing. And when you do that, it's amazing how much calmer you feel. There's all kinds of ways that we can sneak it in. You don't have to be crazy like me and get up at 4 o'clock in the morning to work out for an hour and a half. But we can find ways if we don't let ourselves off the hook. and put it on your calendar, right? Okay, at noon every day, I'm going to make sure that I eat a salad for lunch and I go out for a walk. And that's where it takes the discipline, right? It's a discipline, not a luxury. And I think so many people look at it that way, like, oh, if I had more time, I would do it. Well, what happens when your time is up, and it's up a lot sooner than what you wanted because you didn't take care of yourself. Like, I want to be in my 80s and I want to feel great, but that's only going to happen because of decisions that I'm making
Today.
right now.
It's that consistency piece.
Exactly.
And I was going to mention it when you first brought that up, the concept of compounding.
Yeah.
And it applies to every aspect of life. I've got a friend and client, his name's Jesse O'Brien. He owns Central Athlete and Central Health in Austin, Texas. And he was sharing with me, it's a very high-end, expensive, health wellness facility. Yep. And he deals with a lot of founders, entrepreneurs, incredibly successful CEOs and things like that who lost their health, who, worked their whole life and now are trying to get it back, and how much more challenging that is.
It's so painful.
Taking care of it in the beginning.
Oh, that's exactly right. Once you get out of shape, it hurts. Once
I'd rather just stay in shape.
That's what I say. Just stay in shape, and then you don't have to worry about it. But I get it. Like, it's hard, and there's all kinds of mental health issues and things that do cause people to get stuck in ruts. But I believe there's nothing like sleep and exercise that can get you out of a rut. And I used to deprioritize sleep, but now, like, no way.
Oh, critical.
Sleep is number one. If you're not getting enough sleep, then that's the foundation of everything. But then the second thing is making sure you're hydrated and moving your body every day.
Yeah.
And it can be as simple as a walk.
How do you, because, it's easy for you and I to say, we've talked about, we have similar personalities, it's like, and obligations and responsibilities and things like that. From a leadership perspective, how do you, and knowing that within your organization, there are so many different personalities and, people with different priorities and things like that. I would love, and the reason I'm asking this is I have a belief that healthy, happy employees are the best for themselves and the best for the company.
Absolutely.
And we encourage it here all the time to, work-life integration, and we jump at opportunities to go and have fun and all of that stuff. But I have six employees that I would love to hear from you, your approach or your perspective on knowing the things but also knowing the complexity of the people, within your company. How do you encourage and how do you empower them to take care of themselves and prioritizing that within the company, knowing that people have different priorities and different personalities and things like that? How do you work that into your culture?
Yeah, so we have a full wellness program that pays you for not smoking. We will pay you to stop smoking because financial incentives are good. That if you work out twice a week or 3 times a week, and it's all in the honor system of writing in your log, and so we try to encourage it with some of those financial rewards. You can get like $1,000 a year, so it's not insignificant. But really, just trying to get this wellness is really important. We're an employee-owned company. We have 100% self-funded insurance plan. The healthier we are, and the better that we all do. And so we talk about things like that. But I think the biggest thing is that we tend to what's the word I'm looking for? Not copy, but we tend to show up like the 10 closest people in our lives.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Right. So, if you are hanging out with people who don't exercise, who eat poorly, then you're probably going to do that too. And so because we try to have this culture of health and wellness, and I really try to lead by that, and I really push my executive management team to lead by that, then I think it has that trickle down effect because, it's
leading by example,
and, you work with people every single day and you have somebody like me out. It's like, hey, let's go for a walk. Okay. Yeah, let's go for a walk. So if you have managers and leaders and who are encouraging those things, then people are more likely to do it.
Yeah. Because you're showing them it's okay.
Exactly.
Showing them it's appropriate. And
exactly. So, we never want to, people have health issues. We never want to make anybody to feel bad that they do. And there are all kinds of reasons why somebody might not be exercising or might not be eating poorly. And it's never to shame anybody. It's always just to try to lift them up and say, hey, we're here for you. And encourage that healthier thinking. And, but ultimately everybody is their own person, and nobody wants somebody cramming stuff, down their throats, pun intended, that they don't want to do. And so you have to be careful about that, of saying, hey, this is a value. This is something that's really important to us. Part of practicing self-leadership, our value, the number one thing is take care of yourself. Like, it is the number one bullet point under practice self-care. Because if you're not taking care of yourself, it's hard to be accountable. It's hard to keep it real. It's hard to say I'm responsible for understanding and go and do the extra work if you do not feel good. And so we try to weave it into all of our values, and then support our employees in their efforts to improve their well-being.
Because the ownership mindset, I've heard you reference it a few times. That and I'm gonna tangle my words, so I apologize. But it's self-ownership. And then, there's kind of layers.
Yeah, self-leadership. We call it self-leadership. Yeah,
you.
exactly.
And am I correct in my understanding that one has to happen in order for the others?
Yes.
Like, we have to first have self-leadership before we can have leadership over teams and organizations and things like that?
Well, I would say no. There are lots of poor self-leaders who are in leadership roles. You're leading yourself every day, whether you're doing it well or doing it poorly. In the context of the ownership mindset, we want to encourage people to be strong self-leaders. And if you're a strong self-leader, you're going to be a strong people leader. But yeah, you can see you see all kinds of leaders out there who practice poor self-leadership, who blame other people, who are the victims, who, do shady things to make themselves look better, cut corners. Right? That's not practicing strong self-leadership, but they're still, just take a look on the news, on TV, right? With all of our country's leaders, right? It's a perfect example of
whole podcast episode on that.
Poor self-leadership. But they are leading. And so, some might argue into some great places, but no, we're all leading ourselves every day. The goal is to be a strong self-leader. When you are a strong self-leader, when you hold yourself accountable, when you take responsibility for everything that happens in your life and leadership, when you keep it real with people, when you build relationships, when you take care of yourself, then you are setting yourself up to be a much stronger people leader, whether that's just through influence as an individual contributor or in an actual leadership position.
Yeah. I love it.
Yeah.
Kerry, thank you so much for being here, for sharing some of your wisdom, letting me pick your brain. But more importantly, thanks for being who you are and for making the impact that you're making. I just think, I don't remember when that keynote was, but that self-care being a discipline, that changed my life. That impacted my life. And it empowered me. It did. It empowered me to prioritize that. Yeah. And when I have the benefit of hindsight and looking back and seeing the cascading effect that those decisions have had, it's tremendous. Mm-hmm. And then, you've got these initiatives of creating 1,000 millionaires and all these things that you're doing to empower people with self-leadership and, the ownership mindset, and now getting, the work that you've put in to build your platform, to get the word out and to have the audience that you have. I just think it's incredible. So I appreciate it. And this has been great, but I want you to know that the impact that you're making is significant. It's one of the things I've learned is that when somebody makes an impact on us, we need to tell them, because we don't hear it as often, as we should. And you've made an impact on me, and I can't imagine how many others you've made an impact on as well. So I have a tradition around here, because the concept of this is, conversations with people that inspire me. But we have Inspire by Example shirts.
Oh my gosh, I love this.
And the idea is that you are leading by example. Yes. And inspiring people by what you're doing. And I just want you to know how important it is and that the world needs more of that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for being on the show.
Thanks
but
for
more
having
importantly,
me.
Thanks for doing what you're doing.
You literally are going to make me cry. That's why I do what I do, right? It's like, if you can inspire one person to do something different in their lives, how are you experiencing yourself? That is what this is all about. So thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Keep doing it.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thanks.